Now that the doors have been opened to diplomatic action, having conversations with the junta in Niger, I wonder how you would want ECOWAS to take advantage of these doors now that they are meeting today to have a high-powered meeting with the AU representative as well as the representatives from the US. What would you expect to see them address now that the doors have been opened to them?
Okay, there's a particular solution that I just drew up, and I think that because the international community actually watches us, watches your TV station, I think the first thing that ECOWAS must come up with is actually called discipline. I found out among the leaders of Africa that there is a lot of indiscipline regarding coming to power, regarding holding on to power, regarding staying true to whatever it is that they promise to do for their people. I mentioned, when you asked for the last question, Niger Republic has about 30% literacy. What is the discipline regarding the policy on education of every leader within the ECOWAS region? Because you cannot leave people living in 100 years ago, whereas this is 2023. So if everybody who takes power, for instance, understands that holding power means you have to be disciplined with getting the lives of people better, that's going to work. Then ECOWAS must also speak to the issue of discipline. Every leader who assumes office within the ECOWAS region must understand the importance of staying true to the thing that they promise their people. Another thing is integrity. There's a lot of dishonesty even within ECOWAS. We know that Nigeria is a global power considering its position in Africa. So how much of integrity have the leaders within the ECOWAS region been able to actually put on the table? Don't forget that a situation where people repeatedly support military coups between 1960 and now, we've had 11 different incidences happening between the military and the civilian administration in the Niger Republic. 11 on record. And I simply say here that at this moment where lots of Nigerians are rejoicing even after they have captured democratic leadership, it means that there's something about integrity that they need to address within the ECOWAS region. I also want to talk about self-assertion. Let us look at this now. Immediately after the coup, the leaders of the coup severed ties by words from France, from the US, and some people, and immediately alliance with Russia and by extension China. It is important for ECOWAS leaders to begin to look at how Africa sees itself as being able to survive by not necessarily aligning with any powers, except, of course, there are people who have ulterior motives regarding international collaboration. Any country, for instance, in the West or even in the East that has natural resources always negotiates its destiny from a position of power. ECOWAS members within the community must be self-assertive such that if they are making new collaborations and partnerships with the West or the East, it must come from a position of strength. Let me give you this instance.
Before you give that instance, we need to quickly go on a break. When we return, you can continue your line of thought. Just stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. Before we went in the break, we were speaking with a public affairs commentator, Adeniyi Kunnu, who was talking to us about how ECOWAS could make good use or take advantage of the doors that have been opened to them as we speak, now that they will be having a high-powered meeting later today. And Mr. Adeniyi, you were talking about, you wanted to give an instance, how Africa can assert itself. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. If you check many nations of the world, Africa has become the bride that nobody can just mess around with, because we've got the youngest population, we've got mineral resources, we've got arable land. And I was talking about collaboration and partnerships among countries of the West. One thing that is fundamental to the success of every nation, particularly the nation that has, that has the resources in terms of what we have, is to be self-assertive. For instance, the Eiffel Tower is powered in its entirety by the uranium they get from the Niger Republic, the entire Eiffel Tower. At the Eiffel Tower, there are two restaurants at the Eiffel Tower. Both restaurants makes up to about 22,000 euros every day. The Eiffel Tower makes in excess of 300 to 400,000 euros every day. In 2019, the last figure I actually checked at the course of my research, the Eiffel Tower grossed in a year calendar 83 million euros. Now you have to come to explain why a country that powers with its resources, France's cash cow, is a country that has to rely on Nigeria for electricity power. That's another question we need to ask ourselves. Self-assertion means that you understand your capacity. And that is actually the fourth point that I've listed, that the Ecowas members should talk about. What is the capacity of African countries in terms of its resources? How have we allowed ourselves to be shortchanged over the years such that the things that are delivering value to our partners across the Atlantic Ocean are not delivering value to us? If Niger Republic, for instance, has uranium, why is it that the Niger Republic has not been able to actually utilize the entire value chain of uranium and generate its own electricity? If the Niger Republic, for instance, also has gold, why is it that Niger Republic has not been able to utilize the entire value chain of gold as a commodity that is available on the international market through which it can earn foreign exchange? So I'm simply saying that today's meeting is one of the most wonderful opportunities that ECOWAS members have to be able to look at this item that I've given to you. The first is discipline. How disciplined are ECOWAS members when it comes to assuming offices and staying true? How much of integrity do the people within the ECOWAS region, especially the leaders, have in their relationship with those that enables them to assume office? It is what I've said. How much of self-assertion do they have? Is every African country within the ECOWAS region confident enough to look at their partners across the Atlantic Ocean at the face and say, we are able to deploy A, B, C, and D from a point of strength? Let me say this. There's a revolution going on recently within the East African region with the assumption of office of President William Ruto of Kenya. And he begins to talk, sincerely speaking, that is one of the greatest things that has ever happened to Africa. And I think that this has come to the point where those of us that are within the policy research sphere should begin to look at the statements he makes and certain things that he continues to talk about. Let me tell you one of the things that happened to me recently. The United States Trade Department recently wanted some Black professionals in international affairs, and I'm privileged to be among them, wanted to look at how the U.S. can bolster trade with Africa. I was one of about 6 persons across the Black community of the world that had to put recommendations for the United States government regarding what has been happening within countries where resources are taken from. And part of what came into the document that I gave to them, because we had to pull resources together, were about 6 or 7 of us from across the world, and the leader is in Switzerland. So what did I do? I recommended that the US must review how it partners with communities on the African continent that they take these resources from, ditto many other international collaborators, so that you don't have the kind of incidents you have in Niger. So why am I saying this? This opportunity that I have means that many people within the ECOWAS region that have the opportunity of leading, maybe subcategorized offices, must begin to make recommendations strongly regarding areas where most of these resources are taken from. Look at Nigeria, for instance, and the Niger Delta crisis that continue to, disturb the country, but for the wisdom of some leaders who have managed the process. So today, ECOWAS members must begin to even identify anew what is the capacity of the ECOWAS region. And one of the things that can also help is that, you see, you have to negotiate as a group. If you're talking about the ECOWAS region, Nigeria, being the most populous nation in Africa, should oftentimes lead conversations regarding how Africa negotiates with its natural resources, how Africa negotiates with its intelligentsia, how Africa negotiates with those that are the enablers of solutions that have been provided for the West.